I am excited today. I'm here on Faith Chats with the host of Faith on Film, my good friend Isaac Hernandez. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man.
So I hear that the idea for Faith on Film came to you at 3 a.m. as a clear calling to create a show interviewing people in the faith-based film industry. Can you elaborate on that moment and how you knew it was a divine prompting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew it was a divine because, first of all, that is not anything that I have ever thought about doing. I have been in the television field and in the film industry for quite some time. But, when I was in television, it was as a director. So it was back in the background. It wasn't me hosting any kind of show. So when that word came, and literally, it was like I just woke up at like 3 in the morning, and that thought just came into my mind. So it wasn't like an audible voice where I heard God saying, "Hey, Isaac," it was just pops into my mind. And that was it. It was just those words. Just, I want you to do a show in which you interview people in the Christian film industry. That was it. No other word, no other explanation, no nothing. And so that's why I knew that it was God basically putting that in my heart, putting that in my mind, because it's not something I would have ever thought of.
So, what was it like transitioning to an on camera role as the host of Faith on Film, having spent over 40 years in Christian television, mostly behind the camera?
Well, it was a little unnerving. It was a little scary, um, and I knew that I needed to do something to make sure that I stayed on track with that. And so what I did was I posted it on Facebook, and I posted a little message that just said, I'm going to be starting this show in which I interview Christian filmmakers, all that stuff. And I did that because I needed accountability. In essence, I needed to be able um, to make it public so that I couldn't change my mind, so that I couldn't, think, hey, wait a minute, what were you thinking? That you must have had, you must have not had enough coffee or something. And so I figured that way, my word is my bond. So I figured that way I would have to do it. I couldn't back up and back out of it anymore. And so that kind of helped. Now, did it take away the fear of doing it? No, but at least it really made it so that I knew that I had to do it.
So, how did you go from starting Faith on Film as a YouTube channel to have it distributed over 26 or 27 platforms, including the most recent one, WOTG TV Network? What challenges did you face in scaling the show?
Well, that's the interesting part, and that is another way that I know that this was a God thing. Was I figured, okay, how am I going to do this? You know, what's the easiest way to do this? And what I thought was, well, first of all, I'll just do it. Obviously, I didn't have a whole lot of money that I could have a studio with multiple cameras and bringing in guests and none of that. So I thought, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it like a video podcast. And this, by the way, was before COVID and before all of a sudden everybody was doing interviews the way we're doing it right now, actually. So I thought, well, I'll do that. I'll start a YouTube channel. I mean, that seems to be a simple thing to do, very easy thing to do. And so when I posted that, I posted that that's what I was going to do, that I was going to put the show on YouTube and, do a YouTube channel and all that. And within literally a few hours, I got a message from another network that had like 1 million subscribers on their platform asking me if they could carry the show. So I said, well, it's not really a big show. I mean, it's basically just a podcast style thing. And he said it didn't matter. He said, it's you, and that's all that matters to me. So I said, well, okay. And this is on comments, by the way. This is so it's very public. It's on the comments line on my post. And so a few minutes later, I get another comment from a guy that was running a full television station, a full television network, really, on Direct TV. And that at that time, I think that they had over 18 million subscribers on Direct TV. And we happened to work for the same company. Him and I worked for the same company. He was running this network called Uplift TV. I was running Parables, which was the first Christian movie streaming platform. And so he says, "Hey, man, you work for us in essence. Why aren't we getting your show?" So I explained to him, "Well, it's not really a show. I mean, it is what it is." And he says, "You let me decide." So I sent him the first program that I did, and he started putting it in on that network, Uplift TV. So right off the top, I launched the show into my YouTube channel, which didn't have hardly any subscribers, but also into this other platform with over 1 million subscribers, and into satellite TV with over 18 million subscribers on the. Now I don't know how many people were watching, but that's how many people technically had access to my show. Now what happened from there on was totally just God. I did not go after any places. I didn't reach out to people and say, "Hey, I've got a show. Would you like to carry it?" They would somehow find out about the show and would contact me and say, "Hey, can we carry your show on the platform?" Now, one of the first things I would say was, "Now, I can't pay to buy airtime on your network." "Oh, no. We just want the show." And I think most of that was from a natural perspective. I think it was because it's the kind of show that most Christian networks didn't have. Because most Christian stations and networks, what they have are the preachers and the teachers and the healers and all that. But nobody was dealing with what I would call the Christian entertainment, the movies. And so they wanted something like that, and it was available, and they reached out to me, and I gave it to them. From a God perspective, and I think the reason that God said, "Do this show," is because most Christian movie producers don't really have access to a lot of, let's say, marketing venues. They spend all their money on creating the movie, producing the movie, but then they don't have any money left for marketing. And they certainly don't get invited unless you're the big superstar. You're in a Christian movie. You're Dean Cain or whichever other more major star that's in a movie. Most of these bigger television networks or TV stations just won't necessarily invite you to come on and be interviewed. At least not then. Things might be changing now, but at least not then. And so I think God needed a vehicle to be able to do that. And so he made sure that I was on as many networks, TV stations, and streaming platforms as possible, so that when I would interview these guys, it would go on, they would get much more visibility than they would have had that not happened.
So since then, you brought on Holly McClure as a co-host. How has her perspective as a faith-based film critic enhanced the show's dynamic?
Well, two things. First, for me, it kind of brought me a little more calmness, because it was very and I don't know how it is for you, but for me it was very difficult. I'm not an interviewer. I don't have this kind of experience, so I would always get nervous. Even though once we were talking, things would flow, but I was always like nervous. "Oh man, what if I can't carry the show? What if I don't know what to ask him? What if what if he just is one of those type of guests that just answers with one word, and then I'm left like, okay, what do I do next?" So it brought me a little peace to know that she's a very good interviewer, and therefore she would be able to carry that wherever I would kind of not know what to do next. She could pick it up. So that was I think probably one of the things that I appreciated most. The other one was actually her connection and understanding of the Hollywood side of things. She had been a critic for Hollywood movies, given a Christian perspective on those Hollywood movies, because people will go see those Hollywood movies not really knowing what's there. So she would come on and review a movie and say, "Okay, here's what you can expect to see, even though it's maybe being pushed as a family movie, but here is what you'll find in it, and then you can decide if it's something that you're okay with your family watching." So that was something that was added then to the show, was to be able to not just talk about Christian movies and interview Christian, producers, directors, writers, actors, which was my world. I've been in the Christian film industry for well, when I started, that was probably about 14 years. Uh, and so I knew that world. I knew the people. I understood what the message was. I understood their purpose, but I didn't really know much about the Hollywood side. So she was able to bring in that perspective, and now we're able to add that to the show. Is information on these Hollywood family movies. Now we're not going to talk about movies that are just completely way out there, and all of us know that's not a movie that we should partake of, that we should watch. But there's a lot of stuff that is out there that people think, oh yeah, that's a beautiful, wonderful movie. And then when you go, you realize, man, they're pushing a very strong agenda that is not necessarily godly at all. So it's good to have her bring in that understanding, that knowledge, that perspective, and really those connections that she had developed over the years with Hollywood people.
So, how do you select guests for Faith on Film, and what qualities or stories do you look for in the Christian actors, writers, directors, or producers you interview?
Well, um, I don't know that I necessarily look for something specific in them. I just I love Christian films and I love Christian filmmakers that I wish I could interview them all in one show and just get everything out there. Um, just because I want to promote their movies, I want to promote their work. I want to make sure that they have as much success as possible. So I don't look for anything specific, although it is getting harder now because of how many actually we have access to from both the Christian side and the Hollywood side, that I almost feel like I need to do a daily show, but I'm not going to do it. That is way too much work. But I just look for movies that are out there that have a good message, and I do like to interview the producers more so than, let's say, the actors, only because the actors were just a person that got hired to play a role for the most part, and they might take it to heart and all that, but they were hired to play a role, whereas the producer of the movie, that's like his baby, especially in Christian films where it isn't like somebody hired them to produce. They're the ones that created the movie. They're the ones that came up with the concept. They're the ones that I believe God put this particular story in their heart. And so I want, it's like it's their baby. And so I want them to talk about their baby and just let us know why they feel they were inspired to produce that movie.
Yes, sir. So, continuing on, you've been involved in Christian media since you were 17, including directing shows for Trinity Broadcasting Network and managing Parables TV. How
Mhm.
have you seen the faith based entertainment industry evolve over the decades?
Well, when I first started, you mentioned 17. At 17 is when I started volunteering at a Christian network. We had a family friend who was a singer, Hispanic singer, very, very well known, and he had a show on TBN. That's when they used to do Spanish shows as well. Saturdays was like Spanish for a while. And so he brought me on to just kind of help him because nobody there really knew Spanish. And so he said, I need you to come and maybe kind of translate, be in the director's booth and translate what I'm saying so that they know what they got to do next. Do I want to go to a song? Do I want to do this? Um, and so that's how I started in Christian TV. Eventually, started volunteering. I ran a camera for a little while, and then ended up getting hired as an audio engineer, and just kind of progressed from there, moved into directing many of the TV shows, and then became one of the senior directors there. Um, and it wasn't until sort of my last season, if you will, at TBN, I don't know, 30 something, 40 years later, that I got involved in the film industry, or more of the entertainment industry, because all that other time in the Christian TV industry was all, again, involved in what I mentioned earlier, was preachers, teachers, healers, or so I would direct teaching shows, preaching shows, some music shows, like the Trips, the Trip family, which I really enjoyed doing it. Nancy Harmon, just many shows. One that I actually created while there was one with Leon Patillo called Leon and Friends, which was a lot of fun to do. Um, but there really wasn't a whole lot of emphasis or focus on what I call entertainment, the movies, sitcoms, that type of a thing. And so on that last season that I was there, I got brought in to help find that content, and I realized that it its infancy. There wasn't a whole lot, but there was some. And I've noticed that over the years since then, which was, by the way, about maybe 19 years ago or so, it's been more and more and more of that type of content being produced. And the quality, which back then and a lot of the Christian films just wasn't quite there. It was very substandard, mostly because of funding. But I noticed that it's been getting better and better and better. And they're having greater success. I mean, there's been movies now that are making huge amounts of money, and that's helped to create more of those great looking movies.
So, Faith on Film aims to highlight food for the soul in Christian entertainment. What do you see as the biggest impact faith based films and shows can have on audiences today?
Well, and I have this other little video thing that I'm putting out every week now called Isaac's Corner, in which I just talk a little bit about things that come to my heart, things that come to my mind. And one of the first things I've done is talk about entertainment, about films, and how they're really, how am I going to put this? They may be entertainment, but they're really more than that. They seem to be, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? They are real influencers into how we act, how we think, what we do. And most of the non-Christian stuff, most of the secular stuff that comes out really seems to have a pretty strong agenda to turn you away from God. Okay. And have you become more acceptant, and they say tolerant. You have to be tolerant of things that are really not godly, not the way that we as Christians should live. And that's why, for instance, we actually have a lot of Christians, including in the church itself, that are okay with many things that God is not okay with. Abortion, same-sex marriage, the whole transgender thing. And so I feel that the Christian movies are a way to kind of hopefully bring you back into knowing and understanding what type of lifestyle we should live as Christians. You mentioned healthy entertainment. I don't know if you read some of the things that I had done early on, but one of the things that I talked about was healthy entertainment, or what I would call healthy soul food. And I'm not talking about, green beans and sweet potato and all that stuff. I'm talking about the food that you ingest for your soul, which would be, oh, my computer just went off, which would be, what you eat through your eyes and through your ears. And that of course is media. And so it's it we have created a society of very unhealthy people, not just on the actual physical side with the stuff that we're eating, but we've also created a very unhealthy society in in how we think, because of what we've been ingesting, which is tons and tons of unhealthy entertainment.
So, you've executively produced 7 independent faith-based feature films and 2
Mhm.
reality series. What lessons from those projects have shaped your approach to faith on film?
Well, I'll tell you, the movies that I executive produced were when I was working for Parables, and we did help to fund those 7 movies. They were extremely low budget type films, but they had a good message, and one of them actually has generated over. Well, I'll tell you, it cost $36,000 to make. Uh, that tells you how low a budget that was. But it generated over $500,000 in revenue. So it was a good story. People liked it. The way that came to be made was the producer. We had become friends because another movie he had done. And he said, "Look, I went to a distributor and asked them what kind of movie could I do that would that you would be able to sell as a distributor. And the distributor told him, well, anything with a dog or a teenager or a horse. Back then, movies with horses did really well. So this guy wrote a movie that had a dog, a teenager, a horse, and a young kid all in one movie. People really loved it. The movie is called Healed by Grace. If you can go out there and look for it, it's a nice, fun story. And so we just kind of did that for a while, mostly to feed the network Parables, the platform. The reality shows were again more these folks that had some good ideas for this type of show, and again there wasn't much of that at the time in the faith-based industry, and so he came to me and I just kind of helped guide him through some things about it, and also hopefully with that he was able to find the funding for it, and it was not only a good fun thing to do, but again just being able to be a part of providing something that had not been there before for the Christian audience, so that they could feel safe watching something entertaining like that and not feel like they're losing their salvation.
So you mentioned Jesus Revolution as a favorite faith-based film, partly because you lived through that era. Are there
Mhm.
other films or projects that have personally inspired you, and why?
Well, there's so many. It'd be hard to start naming them, but I can tell you right now, for instance, that the Passion of the Christ was something that was very impactful to me. At first, I thought, man, I'm not gonna like this because it's not even in English, and I don't like subtitles. But the story was obviously was so compelling that I was able to read the titles or the subtitles and still really be captured by the drama of the movie. So that would be another one. There was one that's not even a Christian movie, by the way. I hope I don't get in trouble for this. It's not even a Christian movie, but I felt the message of redemption was fantastic in it, and that was Les Mis, Les
Oh,
Miserables.
wow.
Uh, Again, not a Christian movie, had foul language and all that, but man, there was such a message of redemption and forgiveness in it that I felt like, wow, this is a Christian movie. Same thing with Book of Eli. Again, another extremely violent movie in a way, and obviously not a Christian movie, but very impactful to find out that what he was trying to save was the Word of God, the Bible. So those are movies that they were great to me because how well they were made, but also because they had a really good message of redemption. And of course, there's a lot of Christian movies. Look, I love movies, and I love Christian movies especially. So there's been a lot that I love watching them. And, but again, if I had to mention them all, we'd be here all day just talking about what movies I love.
So, as someone who's worked in Christian media for decades, who are some of the most influential figures that you've encountered, and how have they shaped your work on Faith on Film?
Mm, you ask tough questions. um, there, I watch a lot of TV now that is Christian TV, not the Christian TV networks. I watch a lot of, actually, I watch a lot of like the Gaithers,
Right.
and there's a lot of people there that I remember. Oh my goodness, I worked with that person. Oh yeah, and oh man, I worked with that person there. Wow, I worked with that person there, and it's brought back great memories because again, they were great people that just influenced how I live my life, how I carry myself. Um, I meant earlier, I mentioned the trips. I used to love directing their show. Nancy Harmon, Leon Patillo. I worked with a lot of greats, like Evie Hill, and there's just so many. There's just so many, and they obviously impacted my life, as well as somebody who's not even in the film industry. That was my pastor, Pastor Diego Mesa, who I think the way I am today is a lot because of the 25 years that I spent with him. Which, by the way, I became a pastor for 10 years. I helped him start a church We did that in California, and it became a huge mega church. Um, but there's a lot of people like that have influenced my life.
Some faith based films receive criticism for quality or messaging. How do you address the balance between artistic excellence and spiritual impact when discussing projects on faith on film?
Well, first of all, I don't feel that every Christian movie has to have a strong Christian message. I hope everyone watching this right now and hearing this can understand what I'm saying. But there are, in a church, there's the preaching that the pastor does to the church, right? And it's a strong Christian message. But then there's also the outreach where sometimes they'll do something that is just the Christian lifestyle, the Christian love, but not necessarily a hard, beating over your head type of message, because they wouldn't quite understand it anyway. So I feel the same way about movies. There's the movies that are intended for us Christians. Maybe a strong Christian message makes us feel good, makes us feel like, wow, this is awesome. I have a friend that was a Hollywood guy, and he wasn't necessarily he wasn't a strong Christian, let's say, but he went to see the movie. I believe it was Facing the Giants, or it's one of the Kendrick brothers movies, and Fireproof. That's what it was. And he came back, and he kind of said, what, it wasn't a big, great, awesome film. He goes, but when I left the theater, I felt like, man, I'm on the right team. I'm on the right side right now. So at least it got to him. But there's a lot of people that maybe won't even show up to one of those. But then there's movies that they have the undercurrent of the Christian lifestyle, perhaps, but they're not the preachy type. There's no salvation message in it. I have a couple of filmmaker friends that feel like every Christian movie should have a salvation message in it. That's wonderful. If that's how they feel, they should continue that. But then there's others that feel like, I'm just going to make a movie. In fact, I don't even know there's such a thing as a Christian movie. There's just movies, and those movies can tell a Christian story, perhaps. And so it to me is like, it's okay to make a movie that just has as the undercurrent what a godly lifestyle, perhaps what a Christian lifestyle would be, without feeling like I have to. It doesn't have to be a sermon. So I'm okay with that. I don't look only for movies that have that strong Christian message to put on faith on film. I just look for films that, number one, are good and safe for Christians to watch, but also just have a good story of redemption, and and I want to do everything I can to help promote them.
So, what challenges have you faced in promoting faith based entertainment in Hollywood landscape, often perceived as resistant to these stories?
I mean, there's always some people that maybe won't agree. I did have somebody that was carrying one of our shows, for instance, and because we interviewed people from The Chosen, they took us off, because in their eyes that was not necessarily a Christian show, and I'm sure you're aware of just the whole tie with the supposed Mormon people and all that, and I don't see it that way at all. But that was a challenge that it was like, okay, are we going to be taken off the air on some of these because of some of the movies that perhaps they don't agree with? Because nobody's going to agree with everything. And so again, as I mentioned, some are really preachy movies, some are not. There are some people that are going to feel like, oh, that's not a Christian movie because it's not a preachy movie, and so they're not going to be happy with it. But other than that, to be honest with you, I haven't faced too many challenges at all. I mean, to me, it's been just a smooth ride since we started. And again, it's because I think there's a bigger purpose that God has assigned to it. And so he's going to make sure that it just stays smooth sailing.
So, where do you hope to take Faith on Film in the next 5 years, and what new stories or formats are you excited to explore?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things, the show has been funded by me from the beginning. I mean, and it wasn't like it's a huge funding, because again, I do it as we're doing it right now. So all I needed was an iPad and a few things, some lights, and voila, there we are. And I don't pay for airtime, so again, the funding wasn't huge, but it's still several thousands of dollars. And over the years, over the almost 5 years now that I've been on, it's several $1,000s. But we've been wanting to grow the show a little bit more, and what I mean by that is I want to be able to, for instance, attend more of the film festivals where I could do a lot of interviews with some of the filmmakers that are there. And I can't do that, cannot afford it. I'm literally retired now. I'm on Social Security. So it's like I can't afford to be going to any of these because it does cost several $1,000s. But I would like to be able to do that, go to film festivals and be able to do shows there. And then big for me would be to do red carpet events. There's a movie that's going to have a big red carpet event this next month, I think, in New York City. Pretty big movie. A lot of big names are going to be there. It's a Christian movie. It's a pretty hardcore Christian movie. But a lot of Hollywood people are part of it. They're going to be there. Man, I would love to go or send Holly or something to that red carpet event to get a lot of the interviews. And so we're in that position now where we're going to try to raise funding to do some of those things. I would like to make it a little bit more like one of those entertainment shows that you see on regular TV, where it's not just me sitting here, Holly sitting where she's at, and we talk to somebody, but rather be out there, be where it's happening, be what's, do what's going on. So that's kind of where I see us going next. And also, and this is a bigger one, would be to actually have a studio somewhere with an actual full-on set and bring in, guests to be on the show live, not the way we're doing it now, but actually sit next to them and just talk about that. That's another area. And then the third one would be, I would love to do sort of like during the political campaigns, how they do these where they'll have several people and there's a moderator and maybe one of the campaign people, one of the people running for office, and they do a thing where they go back and forth with the audience, with the people that are on the audience who are part of something professional within that scope of politics. So it'd be great for me to have like a whole, 15 panel of directors, producers, actors, writers, and then talk about a subject, talk about some kind of issue that we deal with as Christian filmmakers. So that's another one. And then finally, the last one is to do something like Barbara Walters used to be, which is a more intimate, where maybe, let's say, Holly would go into the home of one of these celebrities and just talk about their story and, a little bit higher produced. Those are things that are in my vision. Will they happen? I don't know, but they are something that I think about.
So, how do you and Holly ensure Faith on Film resonates with both Christian audiences and those outside the faith who might be curious about these stories?
Well, again, as I mentioned, I am very familiar with the Christian side of this industry. So that's what I bring out. That's what I talk about. That's what I share. Holly being more connected to the Hollywood side, I think that's how she helps to bring in those that perhaps would not be that interested in my perspective of a Christian film, but would be interested in maybe her perspective of a Hollywood film. So that's kind of how we do it. And I think the pendulum is swinging now to where Hollywood is starting to produce a little bit more films that are not so woke or anti-Christ. And so we're having a lot more of that to talk about.
So, what feedback have you received from viewers about how Faith on Film has impacted their perspective on Christian entertainment or their faith journey?
I think mostly to be honest with you, we don't get a whole lot of mail, but what we have or notes just has been people appreciative of us letting them know about what movies are out there. They just, they feel like they would have never heard about it. So mostly they're grateful about that. There's been maybe a couple of negative ones. I remember one that even cussed at me because I had talked about that, and he just said, "Hey, people don't have to go see the movies if they don't want to," and then he called me a effing idiot. So that was kind of cool. I actually was happy to receive that because I'm like, that means he watched.
Oh, wow. So you've interviewed filmmakers tackling significant social issues like Tracy Robinson on Faith on Film discussing her pro-life film post Roe versus Wade. How do you see faith-based media addressing contemporary cultural debates?
Well, first of all, they have to be open to producing a movie, to writing a script about more than just somebody who is sick, accepts the Lord, gets healed, and everything is beautiful. They have to be willing to get out there and tackle issues um, that that maybe everything didn't go perfectly. Maybe it's like, let me give you an example that I just thought was a little off. So in the movie, which I love, God's Not Dead. Everything is great. You got the bad guy played by Kevin Sorbo, and obviously the Christian side wins. Okay, but then at the end, Kevin Sorbo's character is running to wherever, the concert or something, and he gets hit by a car, and all of a sudden, immediately, he gives his heart to the Lord. to to me, that was like, okay, you could have let him die not changing his heart. It happens. There's people who are not going to do it. That would have been, to me, more real than all of a sudden he gets hit by a car and gives his life to God. So I think, I think maybe people just need producers just need to be more willing to show that not everything turns peachy keen once you accept the Lord. You might still
Right.
have to pay consequences because of your actions. The good part, of course, is that when it's all over and you die, and then you'll go to heaven. But sometimes here we will face consequences, and I think we need to be able to show that.
So my last question for you is: has someone who's worked to expand Christian entertainment options, what role do you believe faith-based media can play in fostering healing or dialogue in today's divided world?
Well, again, it's it's like I mentioned, I likened it to eating. What you ingest, what you eat, determines how your body reacts, and I learned that because of my own physical situation, which is diabetes. I was told that I was pre-diabetic. I didn't do anything about it. Didn't change my habits. Still ate what I wanted to eat. Next thing you know, I was told, you're diabetic now. You're gonna have to do use insulin. So I thought, man, I can't do that. I can't be poking myself every day. And so I changed my eating habits and saw a huge difference. And that's when God told me, well, what about the health of your soul? And that's how I started this whole healthy soul food, situation, mentality, thought process. And so I think that the more of these faith-based movies we do, especially if we continue to up the quality and therefore more people will watch it, the more people will then begin to ingest this kind of healthy entertainment food, and will begin to make a change in our culture and in the way we think. We need to do this, especially with our young kids, with our young children and teens, because things seem to be getting worse and worse in how they are.
Well, Isaac, thank you so much for your time. I encourage people they can find you over on Facebook by going to facebook.com/faithful on film TV. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. It was great.
All right. God bless you.